Don't you just love technology?
It says it's live on here.
Does it? Oh, okay,
Yeah,
brilliant.
so maybe we're live.
There we go. Hi, everybody. Hello, how you all doing? Just one of those usual technical things. Everything takes a little while. Internet's a bit slow, all of those things. I'm really excited. I'm here today with Melissa Turner from Endo Empowered. Melissa's a guru in endometriosis, soon to be certified naturopath as well, which is just fantastic. And you've got an online course and your website's wonderful, just lots of information for women, women's health, dietary advice. It's just fantastic. I really enjoyed looking through that. And I'm also going to sign up to it's a free program.
Yes, we have a free Kickstarter to get women getting in the right direction when it comes to how to manage endometriosis. So yes, we want to introduce you to the right way of approaching it.
It's wonderful. So thank you so much for being here today. I've had so many questions, so many women interested. So first, I'd love to kick off. Melissa, I'd love to hear a little bit more about you. Just share your journey with the audience and what brought you here. You know, you've done so much research. You're an expert and, you know, soon to be naturopath. It's just fantastic. So what was the journey that brought you here?
Well, it was actually a journey of starting off in a place of what I call not really living. I was really struggling. I'd been diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis when I was 19 and went through good 15 years of the conventional approach to try and manage it. I had 7 operations in that period of time. I was pretty much living on painkillers, and because I was then also on hormone treatments, my handbag looked like a cornucopia of different drugs. I literally had stuff for nausea, I had stuff for cramping, I had stuff for constipation, then I had stuff for diarrhea, because everything was causing different side effects. And so I was counteracting that with different drugs. And I really wasn't living, I was just dulling out the pain. If it wasn't some kind of painkiller, I'd be drinking because, you know, alcohol numbed the pain. And it was sort of what I call my half-life, you know, which was a bit depressing.
At 19 as well.
So yeah, I went through my whole 20s and early 30s, pretty much existing like that. And I really didn't think there was any other option. I really thought, well, I've got endometriosis. I've just got to accept this is life now, and this is all there is. And I think a lot of women with endometriosis come to that stage because they go to a doctor and they say, well, look, there's nothing else we can do for you. You know, we've tried all these hormone treatments, we've tried the surgery, and here's some more painkillers. And you kind of reach a dead end almost with it. And it was actually a friend of mine from London who recommended that I maybe explore a more natural approach. And I remember when she said it to me, I was like, please, that is so whimsical. It is so not going to work. I have stage 4 endometriosis. This is not going to work. How could something as silly as diet have any impact whatsoever? You know, like I was really, because my gynecologist as well, I mean, I was like, he's the man. He knows everything. And, you know, he said, look, diet makes no difference. So, you know, I was like, well, obviously, you know, he must know what he's talking about. So I ignored her for another 6 months, but I was still in excruciating pain and really struggling. And so I said, okay, fine, I'm just going to try it, and gave it a deadline. I actually said to my body, you've got 6 months to make this work.
So you gave it 6 months. Love that, 6 months.
But I went hard out. I did not muck about. I completely switched my diet. I did all the treatments I could lay my hands on. I did acupuncture, Chinese medicine, massage, you name it. I tried it because I was going to give it my all, or because then that way I could basically say, hey, look, I tried that and it didn't work. That was my approach. I really didn't think it was going to work.
So you weren't hopeful at all. You just thought, this is my last resort. You know, the best gynecologist hasn't really been able to do much. All this medication, my last resort. Okay. So
And sadly, a lot of my clients come from that place, you know, because they come to me, unfortunately, once they've done all that nasty stuff to their body, and they come to me and they say, look, Mel, I have nothing left. Please help me. And unfortunately, that actually makes it much harder, as I'm sure you're aware. You know, once you've been putting in all this nasty stuff into the body, and you've had the surgeries, and you've got adhesions, and you've got inflammation, and you've got all the stuff going on, it's a lot more work to try and rectify that. But yeah, so I started a blog in 2010 to basically, it was actually not for anyone, it was for myself. And my intention was, I actually had the name Cure Endometriosis at the time, because my mission was to try and cure myself. And that was all that it was about. And literally, if you go way back to those posts, some of them are really ridiculous. No, it was really.
But it was a diary to see what was going on.
It was a diary. It was exploring different ideas. And at the time, I remember finding David Wolf, as he became like my mentor. You know, it's like, oh, David Wolf takes these supplements. I'm going to try that. And, you know, and I really became quite obsessed with different supplements and diet. And, you know, and I really thought that diet and supplement were everything. And as long as I was super strict, you know, a controlling factor coming in here, then I would get the results. And I don't know if there was a mindset thing that came with that the stricter I was, the more results I would get. But it did work. I did feel relief. And because I'd put my journey on an online platform, I developed a following, and people started to implement some of the ideas that I tried on myself. And obviously, as I went through my journey, there were things that did work. So I put a big post up, hey guys, guess what? You know, I tried this supplement and it's really made a difference. And, you know, and so people started to implement stuff for themselves. And then I launched a program, I don't remember exactly what year it was now, but it was quite a few years back. And it was all about just nutrition. It was just, this is how to eat, because I got so many questions on an ongoing basis about what do you do with your diet? And because I'd actually not put every single thing that I ate on a blog post, you know, it was like, well, I'll put it all in a program. And the program was called Eat Endo Happy. And I had a few women go through the program, and I checked in with them, you know, to see how they were going with it. And what I found was that there were some women who got results, but there were a few that didn't. And this really frustrated me, because I was under the impression that as long as you eat healthy and take the right supplements, you're all set. But in actual fact, this wasn't the case. So I dug a bit deeper, and I wanted to know what was going on. And what I discovered was the women who weren't getting the results were stressed out to the hilt. They were not doing typical lifestyle things that I was naturally doing. At the time, when I designed this, I was actually living in Queenstown, New Zealand, running a lodge with my husband. So we were in a very chilled space at the time. So I was going to bed early. I was practicing yoga every day. I was, you know, in a really chilled out headspace. And these women weren't. So, and I didn't think that, you know, stress would make that much of an impact, but it makes a huge difference. And so that's when I developed my REACH technique, which is what, you know, women will discover on my website. It's more about a holistic approach. So it's not just going, oh, let's look at nutrition and supplements, because I know that's where I started. And a lot of women do that, and they go, natural approach doesn't work, because they just do those two things. And it encompasses everything. I mean, as I'm sure you know, as a naturopath, we don't just look at food and, you know, supplements. It's what time do you go to bed? It's, you know, how are you thinking? It's getting enough sunshine. It's all these extra things that are part of building a positive lifestyle. And I think there's a bit of a mindset shift that needs to occur for women who want to approach endometriosis holistically. I think, coming from the background that I've had, there is a lot that comes with, you go and see a gynecologist and a doctor, and they say, we can't give you a cure. We can't give you something that's going to make it go away. And so we build this mindset of, we can't take something to make it go away. Or people ask me, well, what can I eat or take that's going to make it go away? It's not like that at all. And it's hard to explain, because it's a totally different mindset. It's about providing for the body, and the body does the healing. So I describe it like a plant. If you put a plant in beautiful soil, in a beautiful spot, it's got lots of light, it's getting enough water, it will flourish. You put that same plant next to the highway with car fumes, no light, forget to water it for months at a time, it's not going to do so
Poor
well.
plant.
Yeah. And that's exactly the approach that I take. So the REACH technique encompasses R, which stands for replenish, and it's all about replenishing with the right diet, and that's supplements. Replenish is a much more beautiful word than the endo diet, which has been used quite substantially on the internet. I don't like the word diet. Nobody likes the word diet. It means restriction. It means I can't. We hate that word, I can't. That's why the website is now called Endo
I Can.
because it's empowering about what you can do to support yourself, So replenish is, how do I replenish my body? How do I provide for my body? What can I give my body that's really going to nourish it from the bottom up, And think about what nutrients you might be lacking. I mean, there's so many links with endometriosis and nutrients being insufficient. Your B vitamins, because unfortunately most women who have had a history with endo have been on either the contraceptive pill or some kind of hormone treatment. That means they're very likely to going to be low in the B vitamins, the folate, the selenium, the zinc, because all of those get depleted along the way. So making sure your diet is replenishing those key things. I describe them like tools. Your body needs to do its job. Like if you don't have a screwdriver to unscrew a screw, well, you can't do that job. And the same thing is happening in the body. So if you don't have enough of the, say, folate, well, your body's going to struggle to detoxify, for instance. There's lots of other things. But, as an example, so that's why we do replenish. It's replenishing what might be lacking.
So adding in those foods. It's all about kind of adding more abundance rather than the lack of, the removing things.
Exactly.
Give you what you need. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And then E stands for exercise, which is fairly obvious to us, who are in the field. But you'd be amazed at how few women with endo exercise because it's painful. If you've got really tight adhesions, you imagine you've got really tight adhesions at the abdominal area, and then you try and go for a run, which, a lot of women with endo tend to be type A personalities. So they get this idea, I need to exercise. So they go all out, hot out, let's go for a run.
Yes.
They'll be sore because what happens with adhesions, they basically cause like a lock in the abdominal cavity. So you've got organs joined to each other, things that shouldn't be joined. Those things should be moving freely. Now, if you go for a run, you're forcing those adhesions to move. That's going to pull on them, So, and I'm guilty of this. I used to do that. I used to go, right, I need to exercise. And then I'd go for a run, having never run before, and then feeling like absolute agony and pain for 3 days afterwards and going, exercise sucks, I'm never doing that again. Never mind the fact that when you do something like extreme running or something that you haven't done for a while, or you pushing your body in any way, and you've got a mentality of push in your head, you're driving cortisol. You're driving cortisol. Cortisol, you're going to have a tinkering effect on all your other hormones, and that's going to cause all sorts of hormone imbalances going on.
So slow and steady when it comes to the exercise, building up slowly.
And I really promote yoga because yoga is, it has so many benefits. I mean, you're talking, not just physical as in moving your body, you're stretching the body in ways that you can loosen some of those adhesions. You're breathing better. So you're working through that parasympathetic, sympathetic response. So, I don't know if your listeners know this, but if you're driving that response, you're causing a stress reaction, and a lot of women are in that all day long. So you're never giving your body time to heal.
Yeah, yoga's beautiful, so therapeutic.
So much, So and then you've got A, which is affirm, and that relates to your emotional health, the way you think about your body, looking at your stress factors, how stress relates to endometriosis, that hormone balance, all of that. And in the program, we actually give you specific tools on how to release emotion from the body. So I myself went through quite a few horrific experiences growing up in South Africa, and I held on to that. And I didn't realize I was holding on to that in my body, and being able to free that emotion and not feel anything when I talk about it. You know, in the past, I used to talk about it and get really teary or angry or something. And all of that was being held in my body. So once again, you're driving that stress factor every single time you think about something like that. So if you're able to free the emotion from it, yes, it doesn't make the event go away, but you're freeing that emotion. So you're no longer driving that cortisol in the body every time. And then we've got C, which stands for cleanse, which is a crucial part, massive part of the whole protocol, and one where I really see women experience massive shifts. So the way the REACH technique is designed is you're meant to go through it step by step. So you replenish the body first, get your body moving so the lymphatic system is moving, make sure you're emotionally in a strong place, and then do the cleanse. So
nice.
Question this because they want to do the cleanse first. They're like, oh, but you know that dioxins trigger endometriosis in monkeys. Why don't we just focus on that? I'm like, your body's not going to be ready. You're not going to be mentally ready. So we do it in that order. So cleanse is really, I mean, there's huge connections with endometriosis and toxins, particularly dioxin, which is in Roundup. They spray it on everything. There's a study that showed that it actually triggers endometriosis in monkeys. So there's a direct correlation there. But I've actually made a lot of connections in terms of liver health and endometriosis, hormone imbalance. So having that estrogen dominance is largely to do with the liver simply not being able to actually flush out those estrogens properly. There is a connection perhaps with poor methylation. So maybe women have a gene expression, MTHFR, where they may have that gene expression. I don't like to blame anything on a particular gene. I'm not somebody who goes, oh, it's all because we have that gene. But it does make somebody more aware that if you have that gene, hey, eat more greens, make sure you're getting enough folate, you know.
Yes,
obviously you're going to detoxify properly. So yeah, the cleanse part is huge. We can talk about that for hours. And then H stands for help or support. So making sure women have got a community around them, women who understand that they want to do this holistic thing, that they're not, you know, being questioned by people all the time. Why don't you just go and see a doctor? Why don't you just have surgery? Because those things don't resolve anything. But they need to be in a space where they're surrounded by women who get it, who've had results, who've seen the changes, and to keep themselves motivated. Because in the beginning, it can be really challenging. So hence, yeah. So that's how we came up with the REACH technique, because it was getting results. Yeah, so
clear and structured nicely, and I just love the way it starts with replenish, because I just think that's beautiful, and that's the whole part of it. And you did touch on you know, the affirm, the emotions, and I did get a few questions about this, and I have heard I have heard from various sources and other experts, and that particularly women, that area can be a whole lot of emotion. So like you said, trauma when we were a child, that area in particular, you know, women with ovarian cyst or endometriosis, is that something that is that a pattern that you've seen? You've mentioned with yourself, but also,
yes. There is, sadly, there is a fair amount of connection with women who've had sexual abuse with endometriosis. Whether it's a physical element, I mean, there's people who suggest it's a physical element, so it's actually the body is hurt physically down there, and because of that, it builds adhesions, and because there is that inflammatory response, the endometriosis lesions develop because of that inflammatory or autoimmune response that occurs. I know a guy very well who has worked on women for 20 years, and that's all he does is endometriosis. And he actually made that connection that there was a lot of sexual abuse in the history of these women. But he couldn't correlate that for all women. So, you know, it's obviously not to say that all women who've got endo have been sexually abused. However, he did correlate that there may be some physical injury aspect towards the condition. So, you know, perhaps you've fallen or you've you know, like a lot, like, or done, like if you've done any kind of gymnastics or ballerina, all that kind of stuff, it's very easy for women to fall in a way that it forces the uterus to drop. And what the body will do, will try and hold that in place, because it's really important. You know, our womanly bodies perceive uterus as the most important thing so that we can have a baby. So it will try and hold on to that uterus. And so it forms those adhesions to try and hold on. I'm not 100% sure that that's all that's good. Yeah.
But there could be a component there. I mean, like you say, lots of different theories. But the damage makes sense.
That's the thing with endometriosis. Yeah, there's no one thing. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's a culmination of things. But yeah, there is an emotional component, and I always question, well, why did it settle in that area of the body? You know, why? I always question for myself, well, why is it predominantly on the left side of, you know, why is it the left ovary that has been affected versus the right ovary? You know, and there's some interesting connections here. So theory is that things on the right of the body relate to your dad or a man figure, and the things on the left of your body relate more to a mother figure or a woman's side of things, you know. So I often look at things like, if your creativity has been stifled, that could relate, because that's a womanly desire. And if we, you know, or if we're trying to be too much like a man, you know, and I think there's some interesting connections here. And there are women who have really shifted a lot of their life choices based on these things and have seen improvements. Once again, I don't want to make that all of it, but it's an
so with that component of your technique, the Affirm, is that, I mean, what does that look like? Is that journaling? Is that doing meditation, mindfulness? What kind of techniques are they doing to actually uncover that a little bit more and understand what else is going on for them?
So in the program, we actually dive right into the specific emotions that women with endometriosis typically feel. And it's actually mainly around having the condition, because there's a lot of women who just don't get any acknowledgement whatsoever. You know, it's like, oh yeah, you've got pain every month. Oh yeah, please just get over it. It's not that bad. All women have period pain. And so for years, many of these women get completely dismissed, like what they're saying is irrelevant, like that they're not important. And so they develop a lot of the negative psychology that comes with that, of not being heard. You'll hear this quite often if you hang out in endometriosis communities. There's a lot of that feeling of not being heard. So we actually dive in purposely into the emotions. And yes, there is some journaling involved and some, you know, thinking of ways to release that. Sorry, there's a bit of noise here. So yeah, and then we use techniques that can free that from you. So one of them is forgiveness work. So what I've done in the Endo Wellness Technique program is invited experts from different areas. So I've got somebody who talks specifically on forgiveness work and how to work through forgiving somebody in, you know, so for instance, if there was sexual abuse in the history, that you work on a process on how to forgive that person. Because if that emotion is held in your body, well, obviously you're going to feel that stress every single time you think about it, or there's any connection to that experience. And then, yeah, there's some other techniques which I can't reveal everything here, but yeah, there's ways that you can free emotion from the body.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
So you mentioned that at, you know, 19 was when you were at stage 4. And obviously at that time there'd be that immense pain. What are some of the other symptoms leading through your teens that were kind of leading up to this point of stage 4 endometriosis? Body signs, mental, emotional, physical?
So just to make it clear, stages aren't necessarily a reflection of severity of pain, because often we associate that like a cancer diagnosis, I guess, is sort of stages. Some women have stage 1 and they have the most intense pain, but it's where it's located. I think the key sort of signs that I had was just intense period pain. I used to really swell up a few days before my period was due, which really, if you think about, that's really inflammation going on. So, you know, I didn't particularly I guess, pay attention to my body that much at the time. I, just went, well, it's my period, that's what happens. Obviously, I was a teen, so I didn't really understand things maybe that well. But yeah, I think a few signs, you could look at is signs of PMS, so if women are particularly moody, if they get sore breasts, things, relating to hormone imbalance. So having those estrogen dominant signs are quite a big one.
So particularly those estrogen dominant, yeah, those are the kind of the telltale signs to look out for. And then if someone wasn't experiencing pain, which I know a lot of endo sufferers they don't experience that severe. You've got the different spectrums of pain. And so if they're not experiencing that pain, but they're getting severe heavy periods, what would be the next step for them? What if they're getting the heavy periods and not getting the pain, would you still suggest to get some, testing done, to see a practitioner to look into it if you haven't got a diagnosis, but you've got the heavy periods?
The diagnosis part with endometriosis is a really challenging one. Sometimes I wish I was never diagnosed, because I wouldn't have gone down the surgery path. What happens is every time you have a surgery, you are triggering inflammation in the body. That's a natural response, regardless how fancy the surgery is, because I know now you get excision surgery, there's different types of surgery, and these excision surgeons obviously promote that it's way more effective and rah, rah, rah. But the reality is, you are piercing the abdominal cavity. And when you do that, the body goes, holy crap, there's something going on. I need to respond. Inflammation goes up. And with inflammation, you're going to get more endometriosis lesions. That's just, So I always find the diagnosis part quite a challenging question. If I was in my teens and I was experiencing PMS, heavy periods, if you're having sex, pain during sex, those would be the key sort of main 3 signs. I actually have a quiz on my website as well. So if a woman wants to quiz, that can guide them a little bit more. But those are the key ones. If you've got those, it's fairly likely that you probably have got endometriosis. But if you're in your teens and you're not on the pill and you can just shift your diet, shift your lifestyle then, and you give yourself a period of time, give yourself a deadline, like maybe not 6 months, but a year is usually sufficient, you can turn that around rather than necessarily getting the diagnosis. The diagnosis for some women is a relief because, like I said, they get dismissed for years, and some of them really need that. They really want to have that, this is what I've got, see, I'm not talking rubbish, I know this pain is real, etc. So for me, that's what I needed. But yeah, it's a bit of a conundrum on whether I would necessarily recommend it for somebody. I think it would depend on the severity of what they're experiencing, and in terms of their personal, if they are in that place of I need to know, obviously then the surgery would be something that would help them.
So with any hormone balancing, we would start with diet, start with the replenishing. What are some of the things, the first things you would ask your clients and members to do in terms of foods to add in, and sort of typical foods you would say, okay, maybe those are the kind of foods you should actually remove from your diet? Would you do an add in and a remove? Are there certain foods that you think, whoa, they're triggers, or they might exacerbate it?
Yes, unfortunately, I don't know why, but our bodies are not too smart when it comes to food choice. We tend to eat the very foods that cause us problems. My mother, for example of this, she has really bad digestive issues, and I keep telling her to get off the cheese and bread, but she just cheese and bread.
It's not that's causing it, no.
So she's German, so that's like her life. If you tell her to get off cheese and bread, it's the end of the world.
Cool. So, beautiful bread over there.
But yeah, it is unfortunately that way. The first food I would really recommend women get off is gluten. There are studies that prove the correlation with gluten and endometriosis. It is like a massive shift. The trouble with gluten is it creates an inflammatory response, and it is very confusing when you have endometriosis to recognize the difference between a digestive irritation or inflammation versus endo, because they feel very similar. So that's why it's like, hey, if we can eliminate the digestive inflammation or irritation going on in the gut, then at least we can try and minimize some of your pain.
Yes, yeah, see what's going on a bit more, yes.
Yeah, and obviously if you've got an autoimmune response towards gluten, or your body doesn't like it, or, you know, there's something going on, well, obviously your body is going to be in this hyperdrive, which then once again is going to take away from that healing energy that it could be using to support you with the endometriosis. So that would be the key one. I pretty much look at, well, these are the foods that are inflammatory, these are the foods that are anti-inflammatory. Let's shift towards the foods that are anti-inflammatory. And, you know, as I'm sure you know, the most anti-inflammatory foods are your greens, your fruits, your vegetables, you know, logical. But looking at foods that are really high in antioxidants is where you want to focus energy, you know. So your avocados, your blueberries, your cocoa. I mean, cocoa, oh my God, the best stuff ever.
And it's amazing, it's beautiful, you know, eat more cocoa, yes.
Yeah, and cocoa nibs, really amazing food. Like, and you can chuck them in everything. I make oats, which you get gluten-free oats, and you put just a few cocoa nibs in the oats, and they've got this beautiful crunch, and you know you're getting, you know, all those amazing antioxidants in it, and just so good. So yeah, and the way that I approach endometriosis, I divide it into 3 key categories. So inflammation being one, hormone imbalance being the other, and autoimmune response being the third. There is an overlap, obviously, between all of those, but that's how we approach everything. So look at diet. What things can you eat that support or reduce inflammation? Same thing with, you know, what can you eat to support hormone imbalance? What can you eat to support that autoimmune response? So, you know, it's like choosing your foods as medicine and then going, well, how can we address those 3 key areas?
Brilliant. So work on the inflammation, work on that inflammation first with the diet, the key, you know, the ginger, the greens, really bring it down.
Yeah, yeah. And take out the sugar, please. You know, sugar is like instant inflammatory response, instant like the immune system just drops straight away when you have sugar. It's just, yeah.
What are your thoughts on soy? I'd love to hear.
I'm not a fan of soy.
Oh, okay, but yeah. I just thought I'd check.
I don't mind the fermented stuff because, you know, there are some benefits, obviously, to it being a fermented product in terms of your gut and stuff, but I'm not a fan of using soy from a hormone perspective at all. Like, I hate it. And I see it, I'm sure you've seen it, you know, in the naturopath studies and the naturopath books. I'm always like fighting in class. I'm like, no.
No. Well, I used to be vegetarian, and then I was vegetarian for about 20 odd years. And I used to consume so much soy, you know, the bonsai milk, the tofu, and tempeh as well, which I don't mind. But it's funny, when I was a vegetarian, I had such painful, heavy periods.
Yeah.
And then I cut the soy out and it completely changed, changed. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's huge. It's a fallacy. You know, there's naturopaths that are under the belief that you can use a natural plant hormone, you know, to basically try and regulate hormones. Yeah. So it's like you've got these receptor sites, you know, in the body, and the idea is that if you fill them with something else, like a softer version of an estrogen, like a phytoestrogen, then you're basically going, oh, okay, then the body just, you know, is going to go, oh, my estrogen levels are going to be okay then. I've never believed that. I tried it. I honestly tested this for years, and I had so many discussions with so many different people and experts on this topic, and it really is quite divided. There are some people who really believe that that's the approach one should take in terms of using herbs in that way, but I'm not a fan at all. I prefer to look at what's the root cause of your hormone imbalance, because mucking about with progesterone and estrogen and trying to figure out, oh yeah, you know, we can take some progesterone cream, or we can take Vitex, or we can take, you know, all these different herbal supplements to try and fix your hormone imbalance. Well, to me, that's looking at a symptom. What is the root cause of your hormone imbalance is the question we should be asking. And that most people don't ask that question. I don't know. I mean, you know, to me, that never made sense. So
Okay, so treating the root cause, and that's when it comes back to the working on the stress. So working on producing your own natural progesterone at the pituitary with stress, the anti-inflammatory diet, really working there, and then the whole reach technique, the cleansing and getting rid of all.
The liver is the answer. You know, if women really want to take something away from this today, look at your liver health. If you've got endo, it's very likely your liver is struggling. And that is really, if you can focus on your liver, is how you get the fastest results. So what can you do to support your liver is, obviously your liver doesn't like sugar. Your liver doesn't like rich fatty foods. It does not like takeaways. You know, it does not like those things. So what does your liver love? It loves dark leafy greens. You know, it likes bitter food.
Yeah.
You know, your rocket, think of things that are dark and bitter. They don't taste that great, but that's what your liver loves, and you want to support your liver. Dandelion leaves, it's a weed, but oh my God, the best thing for your body. And look at supplements that can support your liver, and look at your bitters, you know, your herbal bitters. Like I love coptis, which I struggle to find here. I think it's got a different name in different places, but it's a herb that really stimulates that bitter response, and it's so effective. I actually tested it on myself, because I test everything on myself first. But I tested it for 6 weeks, and that month my period was like pristine. You know, this was still early days now.
Adding in the bitter and adding in that herb. Wonderful.
Because this is the cool thing with endometriosis. I mean, I know it's a shitty condition, but the cool thing is you have a form of measurement. Every month, you can see how you're doing. You know, if your period is clotty, if it's heavy, if it's dark, you're not doing so well. But if you can get to a stage where your period days are reduced, it's more like normal blood color, it's not heavy, it's not sore, you're doing well. And that's the ultimate goal. But every month you have the opportunity to shift that. So you can just say, hey, I'm just going to try this natural thing for 1 month. Just even do it for a month. And see, you know, because if you get the proof at the end of that month and you can see, oh, my period's actually doing better this month, then you know it works. So
you're totally right, because it happens that quickly. I know that with clients with gluten, for instance, if you take gluten out, the next period is normally better.
Yeah.
If they have a month of partying and having alcohol and having gluten, the next month they have painful heavy period. You're absolutely right. It can happen that quickly, the next cycle.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I think we build things up and we make it so hard, and then we don't ever take action. But if you just give yourself a challenge of 1 month and say, right, this month I'm going to go harder. I'm going to just do lots of greens. I'm going to look after my liver. I'm not going to have alcohol. I'm not going to have so much sugar. I'm just going to, you know, obviously don't try and switch everything in one day, because that will feel overwhelming. So depending on where you're at in your journey, but I'm assuming most of your audience are probably, you know, quite up there in terms of knowing what to do. But yeah, just take it as a challenge, and that's what,
love that.
Yes. So,
listen to your body and just listen to the signs and do what you think's working, and a challenge. I think that's great. You also touched on the immune system. Now, are you talking about working on the regular immune system, or are you talking about more autoimmune? What do you look at when you're working on the immune system with your clients and members?
I look at the overall immune system in terms of how well you respond to, like, you know, if you looked at a particular case, you would look at, well, how often do you get a cold? How often do you find you get infections? Is there a history of like Epstein-Barr virus, anything like that? But once again, I don't look at that as a be and end all. And I also don't look at, well, my focus is always how can we support the body? So one of the correlations I made is with women with endometriosis, they frequently have low NK cells. Now, NK cells in the immune system, for ladies who don't know, they're kind of like your fighter cells. They go around and they look for rogue cells in the body. And typically the research has been done around NK cells and cancer, because, you know, that's what cancer is. It's cells in the wrong, you know, they're rogue cells. Now, I describe endometriosis in a similar format because it is cells in the wrong place. They're not supposed to be sitting in that abdominal area. And I did find some really awesome research on this connection with NK cells and endometriosis. And what I found was that typically women with endo have low levels of these NK cells. So,
interesting.
how do we support the body? How do we boost those NK cells? What foods can we eat that have, the ability to boost NK cells? And I found such awesome information. Once you dive into this stuff, it's just awesome. One of the most random foods is oats. Like, you would not think that oats is such a healing food, but oats actually supports building up of NK cells. So, once again, bring in that simple food, like a wholesome food like oats, and it provides so many benefits.
That's interesting. I did not know that about NK cells, so thank you very much.
It's always fun when you go to class and you learn something new and you go, wow, how does this relate to endometriosis? And then you spend days researching.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So what about women who are, and this was a question I actually got quite a few times, what about women who are in the acute phase? They're working, they're busy, and they're in an extreme acute phase. They've got the pain, they've got the exhaustion, maybe low mood as well, but they've already had their sick pay, they've already had all that, they've got to go in and do all this. What are there any sort of techniques that they can do for that in that acute moment?
There's a few herbal supplements that can support them. There's like cramp bark would be one of my preferred herbs. Obviously it's for cramping. It's wonderfully named.
I know, it's a great, you can't forget that one.
Yeah, the other one is curcumin, which is phenomenal, and it's also supportive of the liver health, so it has a dual action. To be honest, the challenge with the holistic approach is there's not a quick fix. It is a gradual process. What I would also look at is massage techniques, or releasing that abdominal area and providing more circulation to the area. When we're in pain, women tend to cramp up and sit in a fetal position. I actually recommend women sit on their haunches and act like they're going to have labor. And that position is quite amazing. It's hard to explain, but it's like if you sit against the wall and you actually sit down, like on, almost like, you know what I'm trying to say? Like, yeah. And it's like as if you're trying to give labor and you're opening up that area. And that frees up the need for the uterus to do this, because that's where a lot of that pain is coming from, is the uterus is trying to expel something, usually when you have your period. So that can alleviate some of the pain. I do tell women to completely avoid hot water bottles.
Now do tell, because I've heard a couple of different things on hot water bottles, and I know my Chinese acupuncturist said that heat actually imprints pain. Which is
and it's contradictory, because we put a big fat post on a few months back, and we had so many heated arguments with all sorts of people selling hot water bottles, and everyone had to have their piece on why what we were saying was rubbish. But the guy that I've been working with, he's been working on women for over 20 years, and he never recommends heat at all, like not even hot showers, hot baths, none of it. What happens is you're basically forcing those adhesions to become hotter and hotter and hotter over time, because they soften when you put heat on, and then as it cools, they get hotter. And so that just intensifies those adhesions more and more. So,
wow, this will be a 50-50 split, won't it? You've got people that just love the heat. And even when I look at research for exercise and for injury in exercise, people are again split with that. You've got just use the whole cold packs, no, use heat for 15 minutes for cold, and then use heat for 3 days. There's so many different opinions, views, and studies. It's hard.
I know. And it's so hard, because I know when you're in pain, the first thing you feel like is heat. Yes. It's such a craving, like you just want to put heat on your body, or you want to go for a hot bath because you know that it soothes it. So it does feel like a natural thing to want to do. But after seeing him and having worked with him personally, and he actually released a lot of those adhesions that I had after the 7 operations, he really advised against it. And I could see, you know, he knew what he was talking about, because I don't have, you know, those adhesions. He loosened them right up. It was amazing.
He did it with massage and just manipulation?
Yeah, we're actually looking at creating a DIY version of what he does, because I want it to be accessible to women around the world, because obviously we're based in Auckland, so you know it's not accessible to everyone. But yeah, we want to create, it's using a tool actually. It's not just your hands, it's actually using a tool to really get in there and release those adhesions.
Yes. Wow.
It is painful, but it does work. So that's the key thing.
Well, they're like scar tissue, and they do say with scar tissue, you know, you could just keep pressure, the massaging, try and release it, soften it, just keep doing that. So I can see, I could see that would be painful, but I can understand why they would do that. And then also, I love the fact you said about opening up. So I think, yeah, just those opening up that hip area and trying to get some blood, you know, get it all flowing down there.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything where you open the abdominal area. I mean, I love saying to women, you know, take up dancing or belly dancing or something where you're forcing yourself to almost open your legs, you know, not in a rude way, but you know, any kind of exercises that you're doing that. One of the best ones is actually if you lie on your back and you lift your bum up, you know, I don't know how to explain this, but like you lift your bum, just lifting your bottom off from the ground.
Okay.
That kind of thing, where you using your bum muscles to push yourself up, but it's forcing that abdominal space to open up at the top. But anything where you can think of reversing the typical position, like sitting is one of the worst things, because you're culminating, all the blood is culminating. It's like a puddle in, you know, when you're sitting in the uterus. It's, you know, you're not getting sufficient flow through these. So, you know, anything you can think of where you're reversing that is really good.
And also during that acute phase, it's difficult as well, because what do you recommend with pharmaceuticals? Because obviously it's a huge liver issue. And if you're taking painkillers or anti-inflammatories, you're just then compounding, and you're giving more for the liver to do. Is there anything, I mean, it's a hard one, that question. Is there anything that you recommend there, or just let them?
What I would recommend is, I have a little mini guide on my website, which is the pain relief strategies, and there's a few ideas in there. But what I would recommend is go for your hardest to avoid the painkillers and focus on herbs that can stop that COX, you know, the COX channel. So basically that inflammatory channel, you know, that gets released. So things like Boswellia. So what you want to do, if you've got your period coming up, you don't want to take the painkiller or the herbal painkiller when you already have pain, because that has already occurred. That channel has already occurred. So that prostaglandin release that occurs, that it creates inflammation and pain, that's already occurred. So you want to stop it before it occurs. The way that those drugs work, you know, the ibuprofen and the paracetamol, they stop that channel. So what you want to do is take something like Boswellia, which, oh my God, Boswellia, have you done any research on Boswellia? It is the most amazing herb in the world. So yeah, Boswellia is one that I would recommend women take before they're going to get pain. So, you know, if you know your period's coming, take it a few days before you think your period's coming, so you can avoid it and stop it. Look at the inflammatory response, so supporting with omega-3, not omega-6, omega-3. You want to get those fish oils in. What I would actually do is almost work on a protocol of your period. So just before your period, work on a protocol to prepare yourself for your period, so you can reduce the amount of painkillers. Obviously, there's going to be an adjustment period, you know, but if you can lower them, like I've had women go from taking 6 tablets a day, 7 days solid, right down to just 1 or 2 days where they may be taking 2 a day. It's not going to be overnight. You know, herbal supplements don't work in the same way as a drug. So it's a process, and it's a period of time. So set the challenge of, you know, 6 months or a year, work with the diet, work with the reach technique, put all of those things in place. And as you go through it, your need for those drugs will become less and less.
Wonderful.
But no, there is no direct comparison. You can't go from, you can't take somebody who's currently in severe pain, give them, paracetamol, and then take somebody else who's in severe pain and give them boswellia and expect the same result. It's not going to happen. That's just not how the remedies or, approach works.
I think that's great advice, and I will put a link to your pain relief strategies. I think you mentioned on your website, so I'll put a link to that. And I just love that advice. So it's kind of like, tracking your cycle, working out what's going on for you, and then you can also adjust what you're doing through the month leading up to your cycle. Do you suggest during the cycle, any food restrictions in the sense of lighter meals? Does that help at all with pain? That's something I had. So just having lighter meals, because I know a lot of women, when they get their menstrual cycle as well as the heavy bleeding, they get a lot of diarrhea as well. So I suppose
that's very common. Lighter meals. Also look at magnesium levels. And this is quite tricky because magnesium, if taken in high doses, can cause diarrhea. So really look at getting a good quality magnesium. Talk to Naomi about the best one, because she'll advise you on, which form to get.
I actually find they're too high. The good ones on the market, particularly the powders, I always say to people, don't take that full dose. When they say take, 3 grams, just take small amounts over a longer period of time. You'll actually get more benefit then than taking this mega dose, which, like you say, could cause a little bit of diarrhea.
What causes diarrhea is a sort of a side response if you take too much of the magnesium. I like to actually use topical magnesium, because that way you don't get that diarrhea and side effect. There's a company that actually specializes in that. So I think it's called Ancient Magnesium or something like that. Ancient Minerals, that's the one. So topical can be really good. If you can get practitioner versions, I find they're far more effective. I've only just discovered this recently because I'm not yet a naturopath. I wasn't able to get access to a lot of these practitioner version magnesiums, and we got given one because in class we had all these companies come in and they gave us one as a trial, and I couldn't believe the difference, because I take magnesium a lot, and I noticed a dramatic shift when I got given a product by Metagenics. I was like, wow, that's quite different. So
they've got a specific one for pain, actually. Magnesium powder.
Yes, they've got one for pain. Yes, I was given the stress one, the calm effects, and I couldn't believe the difference. It's huge. So I never was a big proponent of pushing supplements, but now that I've experienced the difference between a practitioner version versus something you buy in a health shop, it's quite different.
You notice a difference. That was fantastic. I think we've answered. Well, I know we have gone through all the questions that I received from my viewers and from the newsletter that I sent out. We've gone through so much. So just to sum up, the best place they can find you, if they're interested, want to learn more.
Endoempowered.
So
so if they visit endoempowered.com, and in there's a Kickstarter program they can join, which is there's no charge. That'll guide them through the REACH technique. And then there's also the pain relief strategies guide. We are looking at creating a mini version of the REACH technique, within a program. We have got the Endo Wellness Technique program, but that one is a year long, and some women feel that's just too much of a commitment. With that one, however, we guarantee results, because I put everything into that one, and I tested it with, we've had quite a few women go through it and actually seen results. We've had women get pregnant who thought they couldn't get pregnant, and, amazing results. So with that one, we guarantee results, but we're looking at creating an intensive version. So it'll just give you literally a list of, these are the foods to eat, these are the foods to avoid, this is what kind of things you want to do for exercise, and literally almost like a list of things to do. It'll tell you what to do, but it won't necessarily how or why to do it. So if you're somebody who wants to know the why or understand the body, then you probably want to go with the Endo Wellness Technique program. So it's a little bit more advanced.
Wonderful. Well, I'll put the links up for them.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, check out endoempowered.com and and reach out to me if you need to as well on Facebook. And yeah, we're here to help and really want to, stop women suffering with endo and really start living, because that's,
it's wonderful. And I just love the technique. So we've got your reach technique: replenish, exercise, affirm, cleanse, and then health overall.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Health. Yeah.
Help,
yeah.
Connecting with others, which is beautiful.
Help.
So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on. Yeah. And I just know we'll probably get some questions throughout the day when viewers finish work and start looking at this. So I know they're going to get a lot of value. So thank you so much, Melissa.
Thank you, Naomi.